Welcome to the Bible Forum. It's Sunday night, June 7th, I believe it is, 2020. Will our president, President Trump, call out the troops over this rampaging disease? He announced from the White House Rose Garden last Monday evening that he is mobilizing all available federal resources, civilian and military, to stop violent protests across the country. He was decrying, quote, professional anarchists, looters, criminals, Antifa, and others, whose actions have gripped the nation. The words were not hardly out of his mouth before the critics began to line up. Mark Esper, Defense Secretary, said he does not support invoking the Insurrection Act of 1807 just yet. Of course, he also said he had not heard what the president said. Army General Mark Milley, Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, sent a memo to top military commanders vowing to, quote, stay true to the oath and the American people, end of quote. General John Allen, retired, wrote an opinion piece in the publication Foreign Affairs last week that President Trump just does not understand what's going on. Independent Journal Review ran an article last week, a letter from General Allen, critical of President Trump's call for the military to restore order in our cities. Former Secretary of Defense James Mattis called it a threat to the Constitution and said he was appalled and angry at what he saw, talking about the president's response to citizens protesting, insisting we live up to our values. He wrote, never did I dream that troops taking that same oath would be ordered under any circumstance to violate the constitutional rights of their fellow citizens, much less to provide a bizarre photo op for the elected commander-in-chief with military leadership standing alongside. The words equal justice under law are carved in the pediment of the United States Supreme Court, Mattis wrote. This is precisely what protesters are rightly demanding. Did you hear it? Citizens taking to the streets to riot against the government are being defended as though they are simply speaking out against what they see as an injustice. Burning, looting, robbing their neighbors, throwing bricks through store windows in order to gain access, then carrying off whatever they can find. Police departments at a loss to stop this behavior. Citizens living in the areas being impoverished even worse than they were before. In liberal states, cities, such behavior is being tolerated under the guise of basic rights. Rights the store owners apparently don't have. Rights that the citizens now don't have. They can't get their medication, they can't get their milk for the baby. And ultimately, store owners no longer have the rights that you and I have as homeowners. These men and women who have invested in their entire life savings, no doubt, everything they own, are now being looted into bankruptcy. One of these men actually said the protests are defined by tens of thousands of people of conscience who are insisting that we live up to our values as people and our values as a nation. What about impoverishing your neighbors? Destroying a whole area in the city? If I were mayor in the city and these people came in and they firebombed and destroyed, I would not spend money to rebuild it. I would probably give those store owners the money to start someplace else. But those buildings would never see another human being in them. Eventually, there'd be no city. The criticism is entirely proper. It's also constitutional. However, General Mattis and General Allen are clearly looking at all of this through the military lens. President Trump is looking at it through the law and order lens. People are dying. Businesses are being firebombed out of existence. Mayors and governors seem torn between the politics and the realities. General Allen wrote, the slide of the United States into illiberalism may well have begun on June 1st, 2020. He warned, remember the date. It may well signal the beginning of the end of the American experiment. What's he talking about? He's referencing the decision to disperse protesters who had gathered outside the White House ahead of a 7 p.m. curfew so the president could walk across the street to the historic St. John's Church, where he posed for a picture holding a Bible. He didn't mention the fact that the president didn't know what it took for him to make that walk. Neither did the general know what took place. The media reported later that the more outrageous things the military was supposed to have done at the president's instructions never happened. In the end, it all boiled down to why a military medevac helicopter was flying so low over the crowds. That was the sum total. Finally, General Allen called on readers to listen to the brother Floyd, Terrence Floyd, who called on Americans to vote. He said that if Americans heed Terrence Floyd's call to vote, this could be the beginning of the change of American democracy, not to illiberalism, but to enlightenment. What's missing here? What's missing is that enlightenment as a concept implies a number of underlying qualities. Chief among them is the desire for peace and order. The groups behind the destruction are not working for peace nor order. They're working for control, and anarchy is their main weapon. What people are missing are the words being spoken. The president is not saying people have no right to demonstrate, no right to be heard. The president is responding to the senseless violence, the looting, the torching. Trump's announcement came as police clashed with protesters just outside the White House, using tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse crowds chanting, "Hands up, don't shoot," and other slogans. Flashbangs used outside the White House could be heard from the Rose Garden. What the president actually said was, "Today I have strongly recommended to every governor to deploy the National Guard in sufficient numbers that we dominate the streets. Mayors and governors must establish an overwhelming presence until the violence is quelled." That's basic logic. Logic born from millennia of human history. He went on to say, if a city or state refuses to take the actions necessary to defend the life and property of their residents, then I will deploy the United States military and quickly solve the problem for them. I am also taking swift and decisive action to protect our capital, Washington, D.C. As we speak, I am dispatching thousands and thousands of heavily armed soldiers, military personnel, law enforcement officers to stop the rioting, looting, vandalism, assaults, and wanton destruction of property. We're putting everybody on notice. Of course, it was that last statement that got everybody upset. But looking at the thing between the lines, in order to deploy U.S. active duty personnel to conduct law enforcement on American soil, the president must invoke the 1807 Insurrection Act, an act that has been used several times in U.S. history, including by President George H.W. Bush during the 1992 Los Angeles riots. Trump, however, has not yet enacted the Insurrection Act. According to a senior defense official, he's just getting the pieces in place, in case. Innocent people have lost their entire livelihood at the hands of these mobsters. Citizens have lost their lives, not at the hands of government troops, but at the hands of rioters. Across the country, reports are coming in of piles of bricks being offloaded in parking lots and other places, no one taking responsibility for them. There are groups in this country determined to create chaos in order to destabilize our government, not just thwart Donald Trump. This is what the president sees and is purposing to head off. This is what we don't see and have the freedom to say all kinds of foolish things. He's not trying to undermine the Bill of Rights, nor our Constitution. But this is what the critics are saying. This is what they are suggesting, whether they know what they're talking about or not. This president is not going to break the law to uphold the law, but he is willing to do whatever it takes to stop all this before it destroys lives, more lives, and livelihoods. And that's what we elect presidents to do. That the more liberal presidents don't like it and won't do it doesn't change the reality on the ground.